Be a lawyer at a company that's willing to take smart risks is so fun. You get to be creative. You get to, think outside the box. You get to come up with solutions. Other companies, not so much. There's some companies that just say, you know what, we view the lawyers as the cleanup, and then those teams tend to have a lot of litigation attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Amazon had a pretty
Yeah.
small litigation team. They were more about, hey, let's do this right, from the beginning as well as we can, and we maybe won't have all that litigation risk on the backside.
Welcome back to CZ and Friends, the podcast where we talk with legal leaders, technologists, and operators driving innovation and excellence inside their companies and beyond. I'm your host, Cecilia Ziniti. Today's guest is Tina Patel, one of the most respected legal voices in tech. She spent nearly a decade at Amazon Lab 126, serving as the vice president and associate general counsel for the devices and services business. Before that, she led intellectual property deals as a partner at Sherman and Sterling, a dear friend and a former colleague. I honestly say she was one of my favorite bosses ever. We worked together on Alexa at Amazon, and I can tell you firsthand, she brings warmth, sharp intellect, an incredible sense of purpose to everything she does. One of the best lawyers with whom I've ever worked, and I'm thrilled to have her as a guest today. This episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to scale a legal organization in-house, alongside a fast-moving product like Alexa or Kindle or any of the devices we supported at Amazon. How to lead through invention, and then what Tina has learned reflecting. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I should just be silent because you said such wonderful things about me. As soon as I start talking, people are like, what? That doesn't sound like her.
Amazing. Welcome, Tina. So you spent a decade in private practice before joining Amazon. Tell us about your practice and what pulled you towards an in-house role, and then specifically why Lab 126.
Yeah. When I was at the law firm, I was doing mostly tech transactional work, but it was a mix of supporting broader deals on the tech side as well as some specific, tech only work. And frankly, I was just kind of getting bored. The deals were starting to look the same. Law firms had these really high rates. You're getting the same clients over and over again. And I remember when I got the call about the Lab 126 role, and I went home and talked to my husband. I said, well, this role sounds really, really cool, but it's a big pay cut. I said, if I think I only have to work for a couple years, I should just stay at this law firm. That's what I should do. But if I think I have to work for another, decade or so, I really want to do something more interesting. And at Lab 126, when I joined, there's just a handful of lawyers. I think there are only like 4 or 5 down there. And they were working on really cool new innovation. So that's how I ended up there.
Amazing. And what did that transition feel like from kind of partner level, very detailed tech trans work to then helping shape what ended up being Amazon's crazy ambitious bets?
That Amazon job, best job I've ever had. I loved it. I loved the work. The transition was interesting. You go from being a partner at a law firm to, I don't know, like my first week, maybe I was doing some NDA work or something. And you're just kind of like, but then, they really want to pay me to do NDAs. As time went on, you figured out like every day was different. And that's exactly what I was looking for. You actually, throughout the entire time at Amazon, all 10 years I was there, I couldn't ever say any 2 days were the same. Issues would come up, new products, new innovations. It was super exciting. But, it's different. Law firm, now all your colleagues are lawyers. Everyone understands what you're saying. It's easy to speak legalese from the beginning. When you move in-house, you're really more with the business people, and they have different levels of understanding of legal. And you have to figure out how to get them to understand what you're trying to communicate without insulting.
That's a good one.
So you just,
That's a good one. Any particular stories? So you a lot of great threads to pull there. You mentioned, you had this realization that, my colleagues are not all lawyers anymore. Anything in that vein, any stories around that? Or did you ever have a moment that like, oh my gosh, I'm not in big law anymore?
Well, you know very well what Alexa was all about. And when they first came to us with it, it was kind of a funny approach where, the coolest thing about that was that we were brought in early. So right from the beginning. So we actually got to influence product design. But the way they brought us in, which I don't think you were there for that, but was an initial call like, oh, I hear you're a lawyer. We're thinking about a product they described it as a music speaker. They said, but it would listen to you and play the music you like. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And like, yeah, but it would always be listening for you to. I'm like, What? And then they were like, "We think there might be some legal issues." It was, it was okay. All right. At least they knew enough to get a lawyer involved early, which was amazing, right? But then after that, they, weren't quite sure what were the real legal issues or not. And different clients are different, right? Some companies, they don't bring their lawyers in until late. And then it's like, well, your job is to clean it up. I don't actually care about trying to protect myself down the road. I feel, your job as an in-house lawyer is just clean up whatever I want to do. And then there's some companies where the lawyers are the no people, right? The business and everyone just relies on the lawyers to say no to things. So I feel like I went off track from your question. I'm really
No, no, no,
sorry.
you're good. I mean, it was like kind of this like non-big law moment. I think Alexa is a I've used it as a almost like an indicator of, is someone business forward enough to work in house? Because you're right, that phone call of like, so it's a hot mic in your house. You can imagine, this is pre GDPR, and this is like, okay, FTC, and sort of thinking about like 50 states of wiretap laws, which we did look at.
Right. We
We
sure
did
did.
we did that,
I
right? And like,
remember.
dual consent and all these things. And, you can imagine that someone not in-house would hear that and be like, is this a good idea? And the answer is just like, no,
Yeah.
it's not.
Oh, no, law firms are so worried. I don't know if it's changed. They were not comfortable helping the business find ways forward, right? It was easier for them to just lay out all the risks and say, well, here are the risks, you decide. And the business people would be like, well, I'm not, well versed enough to decide. And I think one thing about going in-house is don't be shy about just making the call, no one's going to come back and say, well, you said we were probably going to be okay and now we're not. Well, you know, that's what I thought.
Yeah, okay.
No one's going to like say you're the worst lawyer ever. I mean, you do the best you can. I remember I was in a meeting with some of our execs and they were really pushing. It wasn't my team, it was a different attorney, but they were pushing them for a response on, well, how likely are we gonna get sued over this? And the person kept saying 50-50. And the executive was like, well, basically their feel was like, well, why are you even here? Like I could have said 50-50 without you being here, right? I need you to tell me ways to make it better than, less of a chance or things like that. So the in-house lawyer really has to be well versed at
Elizabeth. Okay. All right. So basically this idea of being this prognostication machine, I'm really into that. So basically, so it sounds like what happened was there was this risk call and it's like, okay, I could flip a coin.
yes.
But so how did the attorney in that situation, or how would you like answer that or sort
Well,
of direct it?
I don't think the attorney in that situation did a really good job because I could see the executive getting frustrated. Unfortunately, it wasn't my bailiwick, so I couldn't actually weigh in more because I hadn't even looked at the issue. But it was a litigation issue from our IP folks. So what I ended up, but to your question of how would you do that differently,
Yeah.
you would not be scared to give an opinion, right? You are hired because you have more expertise than others in that room. When you're the lawyer in a room of business people, you are the most person with the most expertise. So I don't care that in the law firm you were like a fifth year and you didn't get to make a decision. In this room, you are the expert and people need you to give the opinion. That's what you're getting paid to do. And I think there were, a lot of people were just nervous and scared and they didn't want to make the wrong call. But what they didn't realize is by kind of wavering and, not want you give up on opportunities, right? Like what if on the Alexa stuff, if we had just said, nope, nope, this is just impossible, never, you're going to get sued. And, that would have been really tragic.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love this. Anything, so pulling this thread of like this business enablement, when did you start to think about Alexa as an ecosystem versus one device? And is there anything unique about Amazon or how you practiced law there
Yeah.
that
So
bore on that question?
I'll answer your first one. Alexa's an ecosystem was, I don't know when you started thinking about it, you might have actually, you've been a forward thinker and you see that's like one of your superpowers is you can see where things are coming. You probably saw it before I did. It was relatively early when we were talking about Alexa apps, right? It was fairly early after we kind of nailed down the voice deals. Remember those? Worked with RJ on those were fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was fairly early. But I do think at a large company at like Amazon, you probably have to view everything more as an ecosystem than a product, right? Because I don't think a company like Amazon actually just puts out a single product, right? The Kindles came with the ebooks, the tablets had their app store, right? It's just that's the way Fire TV obviously has a whole ecosystem, right? That's kind of the way it is. It's not really product focused as much. And then your other question was how was Amazon different than? Yeah, so I alluded to this just a second ago or a minute ago. If you're looking for your in-house place to go, right? You can get a good feel from the legal department and who's running it and what it's like. And what Amazon was about was smart risks. And to be a lawyer at a company that's willing to take smart risks is so fun. You get to be creative, you get to, think outside the box, you get to come up with solutions. Other companies, not so much. Like I said, there's some companies that just say, you know what, we view the lawyers as the cleanup, and then those teams tend to have a lot of litigation attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Amazon had a pretty
Yeah.
small litigation team. They were more about, hey, let's do this right, from the beginning as well as we can, and we maybe won't have all that litigation risk on the backside. Even on the Alexa, I thought about this. I'm sure maybe you have too, but if we had done it wrong, like we would have killed an entire product category because we were the first ones out there, right? This whole
Yeah.
home smart
Yeah. Yeah.
speaker, voice in the house. We could have killed it if we had, creepy privacy stuff, if just anything. So and ours, not just legal, obviously the whole team, but all that thoughtfulness, we actually didn't launch a product. We didn't even launch an ecosystem. We launched a whole category. And what was cool about Amazon was most companies only get like maybe if you're lucky, you might get a product category in the life of a company. Maybe. While we were there, we launched two. Well, I guess Kindle was slightly before our time, but
Yeah.
two product categories. It's just pretty
So
cool.
the Alexa smart speaker and then the Fire TV,
Actually,
basically, set
well, the
top box,
Kindle is what I was talking about. That was a
and then
whole
the Kindle.
category, but
Yeah.
you're right. The Fire TV, I think technically Roku was out before us. Let's be
TiVo
fair.
and
TiVo,
Roku
yeah.
and things. Yeah. Yeah.
But the Kindle and the Alexa, I think, would be undisputed as two categories introduced by Amazon in a span of a decade.
It was a fascinating
Yeah.
place to work. I mean, I think like this idea of like, and now we're seeing the same thing with LLMs, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that this copyright question, the Betamax question of our era around, is training on data out there. I remember we used to do deals, and now it's actually been super interesting. Tina and I supported the computer vision and other teams at Amazon on AI. And as we all know, AI is about data and training data. And now this question around, can you scrape the whole internet?
Right.
Tina and I still remember she had guidelines of like, okay, the team wants to scrape. Here's what we're going to look at. Here's how we're going to do it. And it's not, I think, a surprise that years later, Amazon is not litigating those questions. It's others because they've done it
Yeah.
in a smart way. But nevertheless, I mean, I think you have this moment. I've really seen a lot of aspects of Bezos and Sam Altman around like, hey, this is how it's going to be. It's best for customers. The technology is different. Any predictions on that? You're my fellow copyright tech
Yeah.
trans
You know
nerd.
what?
How do you think that's going to shake out?
I don't know. I mean, I will tell you that if you don't want your data scraped, your best bet is to come up with technical, positions on your sites, right? To block it. You can always everyone has the legal terms. Whether how well they're going to be enforced, I'm not quite sure. And you probably know that better than me, but technical barriers are what is going to really.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, this is it's funny. I told Tina in the prep for this podcast that there's a bunch of kind of Tina-isms that I think are very helpful for folks in-house. And this idea that engineering wins, right? So Tina and I, one of the things we looked at was privacy and security for Alexa. Very good. It's bank level, et cetera. But there were a variety of things where it's like, no, this is the security team. Like the technical measures are what make the difference. We can write whatever we want in the contract. Once if you really want to prevent something, I mean, we even did crazy things. I remember Tina helped launch like effectively a satellite type of service, something like
Right,
that. Or
right.
it was like, yeah, and that was kind of that thing as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, fascinating. So let's see. All right, so no predictions from Tina on how
No, but
on
that
that.
again, I've been retired now, so my predictions would be weak at best.
Well, so that's good. The humility, I love that. Okay, so you talked about humility. What does success look like for your legal team at Amazon, and any principles or values you tried to instill in the junior lawyers who came in and others who came in on your team? And for context, Tina grew a pretty big team of I think 25 plus, maybe even 50 attorneys at Lab 126.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember how large it was when I left, but you're right, it grew pretty big. We always tried to hire I looked for 3 qualities in people we hired. I wanted people who were smart, but who were willing to work hard also, and who were just nice people. And so if I could find those 3 qualities, that person was gonna be successful. And the reason you needed all 3 was, if you're smart but not willing to work hard, it's really not fair to your colleagues. And if you're frankly, if you're not that smart, you can only go so far. It sounds so mean, I don't know, but you can only go so far. You need a certain level of brain power, I think, to make it, for long term. And then just nice, you work with these people a lot. You do not want to have to be looking, "Oh, are they going to take credit for this? Or are they going to try to scoop this out?" Now, the thing about Amazon was we had no shortage of high quality work. I could imagine at a company where, the good stuff was in high demand, it can get tricky. I had the luxury of never having to manage in that situation. Literally, there was no shortage. People wanted this, great. I can give you that. I can give you this. And it's not made up work. It's like we had that much to do. So,
Yeah.
in terms of how to manage the team, I think one of the important things that I did, which I felt made me a good manager, was trying to understand what people wanted, right? So I think too many managers maybe just kind of assume that their team wants exactly what they wanted. Like X was important to me, so of course it's going to be important to this person. Well, no, not necessarily. Everyone has different. So taking the time to listen and understand what motivates a team member, and for some it was, they wanted a fast track to managerial responsibility. Some people were more content as long as they were having, really challenging work. For some people, they wanted to be in very senior meetings and wanted that, visibility so they could grow as a leader themselves. Some people's comp was their number one thing, and that's nothing wrong with that. I mean, everyone has their own personal life. I mean, whatever you need. So I think listening to that, I think helped, and then just like you said, just training people, really trying to explain why we did things the way we did. I know that sometimes people were kind of like, well, it seems like, even I think you, Cecilia, I think at times would push back. I'm like, really? It seems like there's better ways to do this. But it's fine. It's fine to get the challenge. And sometimes there were better ways. And then sometimes, you would just be like, I get that. I see why we did it that way now. So
Exactly.
it's being willing to listen and teach, I think is both. Listen because there are always better ways to do things, and you have to, you'll be surprised where they come from, the ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, having since left Amazon, I'd be curious if this plays in your personal life too, is like there's this concept of the leadership principles, right?
Right.
The 14 things, now they've added a few more, but among them was learn and be curious. This idea that, at every level, every job, everything, the world is changing fast enough that, a key part of it is continuously learning, continuously being better, continuous curiosity. How has that, you sound, I mean, the passion for learning new things and learning what makes people tick, it sounds like it's part of you, but how has that carried through in your life since?
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to teach those skills actually to my kids. I mean, you probably have too. I've brought up Amazon leadership principles to my children ever since they were like 7 years old. I remember when they were like in early middle school, I made them read the principles and pick one and then write like half a page about why they thought it was interesting. So I think those principles go well beyond the work. I think they go, at home. In terms of bringing it, the people who really are willing to learn and be curious are the ones who are gonna survive. I mean, I left the workforce before AI became huge, and the people who are ignoring it are going to be so sad. They're going to be I don't even know what. what they'll be doing in 5 years. I really don't. My perspective again, unfortunately, is outside the workplace, but like I look at what our schools are doing, right? And, for schools that are saying, hey, no AI, period, that's a lost opportunity. That's not good for our kids. I understand how you don't want a student to have AI write the paper and then turn it in, but there are ways that the teachers can avoid that happening. And we need to get our students comfortable because you know what? If you're not, others are, and you're going to be so out of luck. So the same thing with our attorneys today. I mean, you impressed me greatly as, getting a company in this field and so early your start and having the vision to realize, okay, this is completely changing the legal field and I want in now, which is there's still a lot of lawyers who I don't think use it. And I was at a conference, I was at a school where a junior attorney was with me, and they were asking the audience how many people use AI. And again, I'm not working, but I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, how many? I use it every day, like plan my vacation, pick me out the restaurants, whatever. And she wasn't raising her hand. I'm like, really? And she's like, no, no, people don't really. And it's a big firm in the South, and I was like, wow. And this was only 2 years ago. And I was like, okay. I'm like, well, you need to get on that because that is, even if you're just using it as like a first round of something, I'm not telling you to use AI to submit your projects, but so.
Yeah, no, great themes there. I think it's been interesting because you and I saw these other categories getting created and this like early adoption concept. But this idea of like I literally remember you mentioned schools. So little story, I had an English teacher, Mr. Seitz, rest in peace, best English teacher ever. His fourth year, senior year, and, I think it was English literature. And for our final project, instead of just, writing a paper on Chaucer or whatever it was, he had us do it in Microsoft PowerPoint, which at the time, in the late 90s, was like the new technology, was creating slides. And so that was the final project. I don't remember much about Chaucer, but I remember that my first 2 or 3 jobs as a paralegal, actually, I was weirdly good at PowerPoint, and it was like a career asset for me for life. And so
Ah,
like turning colors and cropping images and all this stuff. So I think that your story about AI is apt. And we see this, and I'm actually quite proud of the legal profession. I think we've seen, the latest polls that we did, and I can put them in the show notes, we've got like 85% of in-house lawyers are using
great.
AI at least once a
Yeah.
week, which is great. And I do think this is a transition from the firm, which is fun.
I think you're right. I think in-house, I'm not surprised they pick it up faster than law firms. Law firms are a little slow on the upkeep. I mean, on the picking up, new technologies.
Yeah. Yeah. So any memorable war stories from your time, either at Amazon or at the firm that you think would be instructive in some way?
No, I don't know if it's war stories. I do have one about Cecilia.
No, okay. Go. No,
So
it's good. Go
Cecilia, do
ahead. Go
you
ahead.
remember the most stressed you were ever with me?
I do. I remember it was
We might have
it
different
was the
memories.
CVAA. Yeah, it was the Computer Video Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010, signed into law by Obama, and it had or maybe it was 2015, but anyways, it had rolling deadlines, and essentially my memory of it is that the team was going to blow a deadline, and we're going to launch effectively an arguably non-compliant product. And I actually use this for training, actually, so it's a great example. I was product counsel for a variety of products. I think it was Kindle, Fire TV, a few others. And this particular compliance with the law was like the big thing that I was working on. And I got questions from different parts of the business of like, hey, what is that date again? Is it March 25th? When is it? And it was a realization that like there's a question behind the question. So they were asking what the date was because they were going to blow it.
Yeah.
And so essentially I'm like, oh no, this is going to launch. And so I think I ran, it was like we had a separate hallway at Amazon where, Tina was a fancy exec and a beautiful, view and so on. And I was with the sort of other folks at the junior levels. And I went across the hallway and I'm like marched over there. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to miss this deadline. So anyway, she's like working on something else, probably doing an acquisition, probably something fascinating. And my little deadline was not the thing. So that's what I remember
Yeah, but
about the story, but would love the other. But from a leadership standpoint, yeah, I mean, we did what we could. The one other advice I will give, and I give to other product counsel, is just kind of management of if you're going to have a non-compliance, which you will
right.
have. What I remember was we had Jira or some kind of bug ticketing system, and you could tag if you were going to fix the bug or not. And what I remember was they changed a whole bunch of accessibility bugs to won't fix. Like literally, that was the moniker, was won't
Yeah,
fix. And I was like, no, 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 do not do that. So I kind of basically advised, and it was like deferred, and then we
and they
got
got
them,
fixed
a
eventually.
month or two
Yes,
later.
they all
They,
got
they they got
fixed.
fixed. And to be fair, I mean, to your point about strategy, I think Amazon Legal did a great job on strategy because at the same time, I believe Amazon was the first set-top box or the first entertainment system to provide audio
That's
description.
right, that's right. Yeah, I forgot.
So
Yeah,
they
you were
launched that at
so
the same
huge on the
time.
accessibility features and supporting that group also, which was tough because, if a feature were to get dropped, it was always going to be an accessibility feature, and over time, it got
It's true.
better, but yeah, yeah. No, I think
It's
yeah, and I
super
think
fun.
another learning from that is, nobody likes panicky lawyers, right? It's you know what? It can
Yes.
always be fixed. We can work it out. Do not, you don't like when you go see a doctor, you don't want the, oh, this is so bad. Immediately you're like, same thing when your lawyer's like, oh, you want a lawyer who's like, okay, well, let's see what our options are. And, internally you can be like, why did you put me in this situation? And now I've got to clean up your mess. But, that calmness I think is really important. Unfortunately, that sometimes just comes with years of practice, but I think that that's an
Exactly.
important one.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, I do say, since I get a lot of questions, listeners asking about, I liken the transition from the firm to Amazon in terms of, risk tolerance and ability to not panic, collaboration, et cetera. Very similar to the transition from being a lawyer to being a business
Yeah.
person. It's like it's been fascinating, and I think that ability to I love my lawyers now, right? So we have a fractional GC that helps us out, and that ability to be like, here's how it's going to be. I've negotiated against XYZ companies. The result's probably going to be this, and me now I'm on the revenue side, and I'm like, I don't want to lose this deal, and she's like, you don't want to lose this deal. You want to give up $20 million of liability? The sum total of everything you've raised. She's like, they're still gonna sign. It's fine. Chillax. Wait a week. And then,
Yeah,
the deal got
I'm
done.
sure that
We did. Yeah.
transition's a little tough to kind of, put the legal in the back seat and just like, I have other people to do that now and I need have other things to focus on.
It's been incredible. So, all right. So, you've been retired a couple years now. What's it been like to reflect from the outside? Do you miss the law? Is it fun? I mean, a lot of people, literally, I get people that are like, okay, well, actually, a little story. I had a retirement fantasy so badly in my last GC job that I was like, it is not normal to have a retirement fantasy. And I realized, sort of like you did, that like it was time for something new. And that was part of the impetus for starting GCAI. But I'm putting the question on you. So you were retired a few years. What's it
Yeah.
was it like?
So, my story. So you were gone when I retired. You had already left Amazon, but basically, I have twins and they're 18 now. My husband and I are both lawyers, a lot of long hours, travel, especially at the law firm. And so we had a nanny, 50 hours a week, like a lot of families do. And we kind of, stepped back and looked at things and said, kids are going to be off to college in 5 years. Do we want any more imprinting to do on them? Like, do we want to, influence? And the answer was yes, we do actually. So that was it. So I just said, you know what, we're done. And so we moved down, we both quit our jobs. I gave Amazon like a year notice, so it was plenty of time. Quit, moved down to San Diego area, and then of course, then the pandemic hit, so we got a lot of time with our kids, a lot more than
Wow.
we expected. Um, but I got to focus on that part of that I had missed out on the parenting part and I feel like the timing was right. They get different challenging when they're older, but I feel like I could influence more things these last couple of years than I would have if I took the time off earlier. So for everybody, it's a different story. But for me, that was how we ended up retired. Absolutely miss the people. I miss the issues. I miss solving problems, right? Solving problems is just so fun. And I really miss that. But what I don't miss is having to be anywhere at any time, like having to be somewhere at a specific time. I don't miss that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this, meeting
Yeah,
with
it's funny
you
you
was
say that.
probably like my only firm commitment I've had this whole month, I think. So.
Amazing. Well, it's funny because now So in startups, we're deeply influenced by Paul Graham. So he's the founder of Y Combinator and, led to Airbnb and, Stripe and other companies. But he has this concept of the maker manager schedule, where this idea that engineers and builders having anything on your calendar, like literally any commitment on your calendar, kind of wrecks the creativity of the whole day. And so it's been interesting because Tina, I always did think part of the reason for your success at Amazon is you are an
Yeah,
engineer almost at heart, I feel like, and kind of have that relations. Couple stories. So Tina, sometimes she was so quick to answer a question that me and the more junior attorneys were like, she's like an ATM. It's like, should we do this? A, it's like in such like accuracy and pinpoint and just amazing. And this woman has the fastest email SLA of anyone I have literally ever met. And now it's funny because for me, I aspired to be that way. And then I took a job, CEO, where 250 emails a day, and there's just
very
no, it doesn't
difficult.
matter. Like it's
Yeah.
literally superhuman to do that. So awesome. All right. And then anything on what piece of advice would you give? So look back in time and you're leaving the law firm to go in-house. What advice would you give?
I would tell attorneys making the move to in-house to, you know, be ready, be open to work. Obviously you're working with a lot of non-lawyers now, depending on how large your in-house department is. Don't be shy about making the calls. I think I said this a little earlier, but you are now the expert in the room. You should make the decision, make the call. There's no one to really run back to often, and it's okay. And also, you know what? You'll make mistakes. So it's as important as it is to try to do everything perfectly so you can avoid mistakes. Realize you will make mistakes, and how you handle them is just as important as trying to avoid them. So don't go in being so scared of making a mistake that you're frozen. You can't do anything. That would be actually that'd be a bad outcome, right? It really does work out, if you're trying hard, you're putting the time in, it will be okay. Don't just get so scared that you just don't really show what you have to offer.
I love it. What's a book or podcast you
You
recommend?
know, so this is a tricky one because I really, again, retired life, all I ever do is I prepare for my next vacation. So what I just read, we just got back from Fiji in Australia. So because I'm type A, I knew every like restaurant, every location, every activity, what to do if the weather was this or that. And so I would read a bunch of travel blogs, to really prepare myself. I would use AI also, but the travel blogs still add that something special that I can't get from AI answers. So I don't have
I
anything that I
love
read
that.
regularly except preparing for my next fun activity.
So good, so good. Of everything you've achieved as an attorney, as a person, what are you most proud of?
You know what? It's you. I can't give all the names of the people because I will leave someone out and I'll feel bad, but it's these teams and these people that I got to influence their development when they were relatively junior, and then they came out so successful. And I mean, that's like a tiny fraction maybe I had to influence, but it's like when your kids, when your kids succeed.
Yeah. No, Tina is being very humble, but her kind of N of folks that have become GCs and have become, incredible leaders leading teams who were influenced by Tina. I think it's maybe it's a Tao proverb or something like that, essentially saying something effective like leadership is when the men look around at each other and say we did this ourselves and not the leader. So that was Tina's leadership style. So I'm so excited to hear her that you said that. That's lovely. And we've got tenured professors were on Tina's team.
You.
We've got people at at OpenAI and elsewhere. It's the seeds of technology law. Like the N from Tina is gonna be
That's
small. So
funny. What
very very
happens when they
excited.
negotiate against each other? They're all
Yeah,
using the
exactly. So I've done that. So funny enough that you should say that. So Kathy Zhu is the founder of Streamline AI, which we have some shared customers. And I was opposite her on a deal when I was at Cruise. And I was so inspired that she became a founder that
yeah.
it was, a pretty big impact on deciding to do that. So awesome. All right. And so any closing thoughts, Tina, for our listeners or just in general?
I don't know. I am an outsider now, but I am really, really interested to see how, the influence of AI and everything, not just in the legal field, right? Put it this way, how far can I get away with blaming AI for, bad outcomes on things? And I don't know, it's just there's just so much. I didn't see this coming 6 years ago. I really didn't. So I am excited to see how this progresses. One of my friends who's like at a VP at one of the investment bank companies was saying like they're, you know, almost all their interns are now just more training on AI, right? They're not doing the traditional stuff anymore. Another M&A partner friend of mine said the AI puts out a much better first draft of a stock acquisition or even an asset purchase agreement than the junior associate. And that actually makes
Yeah,
me nervous too,
I
right?
believe it.
Because you still need senior attorneys, and how do you get senior attorneys if they're not getting properly trained? So what makes me nervous is how the legal field will look. And I'm nervous for selfish reasons because one of my kids who he wants to go to law school.
Yeah, he's amazing. Best intern we
This
ever
makes
had,
me
by
Hey,
the
by
way.
the way,
Thank
he's
you.
going to Vanderbilt next year. Yeah, he's starting there, and then he
Hey,
wants to go to law
congratulations.
school. So, but I've told him, I said, I have no idea what that field will look like in 5 years. So,
Yeah. Get him in. We'll do some
yes,
prompting. All right. Good stuff. Hey,
exactly.
thanks so much,
Thank
Tina.
you.
This
I
was
really
really
enjoyed it.
fun. That was my conversation with Tina Patel, legal architect behind one of the most iconic tech products and multiple product categories launched at Amazon. She's a mentor to so many people. I'm so inspired by her being proud of having her kind of seeds planted around all the Silicon Valley. Super exciting. So if you're building legal frameworks at scale or looking to lead with more confidence, I hope this episode gave you something to take with you. You can follow CZ and Friends wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to our newsletter at gc.ai/newsletter for behind the scenes insights, guest announcements, and practical tips. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for listening.